Casey, a few weeks ago, I started using a new AI tool. It is called Perplexity. It is an AI search engine, and it is the talk of the town out here. Like, I feel like everywhere I go in AI circles for the past couple of weeks, this is the tool that has got people really excited.
Yeah, I have heard you say that. I have used it a bit myself. I have only used the free version, and candidly, it doesn't stack up to the paid versions of ChatGPT and now Gemini Advanced that I've been using. But, I trust you on this one, that it's good.
It is good. So it's a little bit different than those products that you just mentioned. So it's a search engine, basically. It's kind of looks like Google if you go to it. There's like a text box in the middle of the thing. And it's not sort of a conversational interface. It's not trying to have a conversation with you. It is trying to get you answers. So what you do, you type in your question or your query. It goes out, it scours the web, and it tries to sort of use AI to summarize what it finds. And it also has some helpful added features. You get access to this thing called Copilot, which basically tries to help you ask better questions by sort of asking follow-up questions before it gives you an answer. So, for example, when I asked it, I'm throwing a birthday party for my kid's second birthday coming up, and I was trying to figure out where to have it. So I asked Perplexity something like, where's a good place to host a birthday party for a 2-year-old in the Bay Area? And it came back. Copilot said, well, do you want indoor venues or outdoor venues? And then I made a choice, and then it said, what's your budget? Like, is it under $100, between $100 and $200, or like over $200? And so after I'd made my selections, only then did it give me kind of the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so another feature that I really like in Perplexity is that it can search through specific data sets. So you can limit your search to academic journals or Reddit posts or actually YouTube videos. It has scraped YouTube. And so, for example, when I was going to look for, I was trying to change a setting on my water heater the other day.
How'd that go?
It didn't go well, but it was not Perplexity's fault. It just turns out that I don't have a very good water heater. But I was looking for this on YouTube, but I was having to scroll through a bunch of videos to find the part where they talk about changing this one setting. And so instead I just went to Perplexity. I limited the search to YouTube videos. I put in my water heater's information, and it came back with the right answer.
I just love that
from YouTube.
I just love that we're in this place as a species where our complaints about tech are like, well, I didn't want to watch the whole YouTube video. It was too hard. So we just scraped the entire web and just sort of threw it in a blender. And now I can just ask this guy's little chatbot. Anyway.
So I would say it's a good product. People really like it. It's raised a ton of money. People like Jeff Bezos have invested in it. So it's getting a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
But I think it also raises some pretty serious questions about copyright and publishers and what the future of the internet will look like if AI search engines are just going out and browsing everything and summarizing it for us. And candidly, for people like us who get paid to publish things on the internet, this product scares me because it is a signal that we are moving into a world where no one will need to visit websites and see ads from publishers that fund things like journalism.
Yeah, to put an even finer point on it, they are selling our labor for $20 a month.
Yeah, you could definitely make the case that that is what they are doing. So today, to talk about all this and to answer some of these questions, we've invited the CEO of Perplexity, Aravind Srinivas. Aravind used to work for OpenAI before he started Perplexity, and I'm just really curious to ask him what direction he thinks that his product and products like it are pushing all of us on the internet.
And I want to know how much thought he's given to the world that he might be inadvertently creating.
All right, let's bring him in.
I know there was some conversation about whether we should say, let's bring him in, and I wanted to try an alt.
Yeah.
Lower the drawbridge to the studio.
Aravind Srinivas, welcome to Hard Fork.
Thank you for having me here.
Hi.
Big fan of your podcast.
Oh,
Thank you. So I've used Perplexity a bunch. It's my default search engine. And I think we should just explain for people what it is. So at a very basic level, Perplexity is a search engine, which you actually call an answer engine, which works by, as I understand it, kind of going out and having sort of a robot kind of browse the web for you, and then using an AI language model, which is sort of a combination of things like GPT-4 and your own AI language models to kind of summarize what it finds and present that for the user who is searching for something. Is that at a very basic level, right?
Yeah, at a very basic level, that's pretty accurate. That's a pretty good summary. what Perplexity does is you ask it a question, instead of just giving you answers from what the AI or the neural network model has memorized from the internet. Instead, it actually goes and does the work of taking the relevant links to what you asked, reads those links, and takes the relevant paragraphs in each of those links and tries to write a concise 4 or 5 sentence answer, and also tell you where each sentence is coming from in the form of footnotes. It doesn't try to say stuff on its own. Of course, there are times it makes up stuff out of hallucinations and imperfections in the AI model, but by design, it's only meant to say what it's read at that moment relevant to your query. So this system in AI is called Retrieval Augmented Generation,
Or
RAG.
rag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
rag time.
It's rag time. Do 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 do. So one thing that I actually really like about Perplexity in my testing is that it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't hallucinate that much, but it still does
Yeah.
get things wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
column that I wrote about Perplexity, I talked about some examples. I asked it when's Novak Djokovic's next tennis match. It gave me an answer that referred to a tennis match he'd already played. Why do these AI search engines still get things wrong? And do you feel like that's going to be a problem for you?
hmm So I think there are two reasons why mistakes happen. One is your index not being fresh, and the other is the AI model not being very good at handling corner cases or reasoning. Like, for example, I saw a hallucination today that was interesting. Uh, Jan LeCun made a joke on my tweet yesterday that let me start another rumor that Ilya Sutskever has joined Perplexity. And then somebody else posts a screenshot of Perplexity as a reply to that saying, the query was, is Ilya joining Perplexity? And then the answer was, yes, Ilya Sutskever joined Perplexity according to Jan LeCun and so people. And so that answer was written by a model that we train ourselves, and that model didn't quite get it right. When I tried the same answer with GPT-4, it got it right. It just says, look, there are rumors, but Jan has clearly mentioned it's unfounded. So these are things that, as we address these hallucinations by collecting data specifically where the current generation of the models fail, we can address. The other part of the index always being fresh. Maybe it's not gotten the latest news in its index yet. It's not like crawled the web as frequently as it should have. All these things are potential reasons where even if the model was really good, it doesn't have the necessary information to give you the right answer. So our company is set up to focus on both the search component and the AI component together. And it's a hard thing to do. And that's why I think also relative to OpenAI, we are a different company. Because of our focus on both these things together, rather than trying to build the most capable general purpose AI, we think we'll perfect this version of the chat use case better.
I mean, it's so challenging, though, because when I use Perplexity and other engines as a journalist, I still have to go and check all of the source material, right? I cannot bet that you are right, because if I, God forbid, put the wrong information about a tennis match in Platformer, my readers would never let me hear the end of it. So as a result of this, I wind up clicking on all the citations and reading through the citations, trying to find it and trying to think to myself, okay, is this a vetted source? How do they know that this tennis match is happening? And I wind up spending more time maybe than if I had just Googled it. So I'm interested in how you think about that problem and how you position Perplexity as an answer engine when in fact it does have no answers. It just runs math over other people's answers.
Mm-hmm. So my belief is that we want to give you the 80-20. Like, there are a lot of links on the web. You don't know which link to click. You don't know like whose link to actually like consider trusting and not trusting. So we want to give you the 80-20. We want to give you the sneak peek of across all the web pages. And there will be some part of the summary that you still want to dig deeper on. That part you go and read. Like, we are giving you the sources right away. And we do actually want to drive traffic to publishers and tell you exactly which part of the answer came from who. So that part, like, we want to continue doing. And as for like working on like, making you trust the answers more, we can only do that by improving the product more. So you feel like, okay, it's really not hallucinating much. And like, we can try to do a job at trying to give the user some level of confidence in terms of whether this part of the answer we're not 100% sure. It's a hard problem to solve, by the way. Like, it's very hard to know tell an AI like what it knows and what it doesn't know. And like we are tracking all the research that academia is doing on that and seeing what we can take from there.
How do you instruct the AI which sources to trust and what not to trust? Like, how do you develop
It's a
that
hard
sense?
problem. We made some good decisions in the beginning for what it's worth. We decided that we would prioritize peer-reviewed domains. Like, for example, New York Times. New York Times, you cannot just arbitrarily write what you want. Like, you have to get it approved by your editor, your peers.
Oh, don't we know it?
Yeah, and famously, no one disagrees that the New York Times is a trustworthy source of information. I will just say, if you're looking for some websites to downrank because they're full of untrustworthy information, platformer.news
All right, that's enough out of
would
you
be
for
one
today.
that your AI can ignore. Okay, so I want to ask you a more serious question, which is, when AI chatbots first came out, I remember one of the big limitations and frustrations was that they weren't up to date, like their knowledge cut off at a
Yeah.
certain point in time.
Yeah.
But now we have ChatGPT, which can browse the internet, and Bing can browse the internet, and Google's Gemini can browse the internet and tell you about stuff that happened like an hour ago. So, what's the practical difference between what you're building at Perplexity, which is an AI-powered search engine, and what those companies are building, which are AI chatbots that can access the internet?
Yeah. The fundamental difference is the focus on search and adding a lot of depth to the search use case versus just trying to be a generic chatbot that does everything, right? Now, if your need is for accurate facts at the fastest speed possible, then there's no alternative today. Like all these other bots have to make a lot of decisions on when to use a search, when not to use it, and like how many times you browse. Like if you use ChatGPT, it probably takes you like 6 or 7 seconds to actually get a browsing answer.
It's very slow.
And on Perplexity, you just get it in an instant, right? So that is our angle against ChatGPT for the search use case. Now, as for Bard or Gemini, as they call it today,
Yeah, Bard is dead.
Gemini Advanced with Ultra 1.0 is how I prefer to say it on this podcast.
yeah. So Gemini is probably better in position to make it a lot faster, retrieving information from the web. Now, honestly, the angle there is their business model. They're like, if they really wanted, they can just go all in on Gemini and just cannibalize Google search.
Because you're saying that if Gemini gets as good as it could be eventually, people will not have reason to use Google search, which is where
Exactly.
Google is currently getting all of its money
Exactly.
through ad revenue.
Exactly. And also they're putting it behind a subscription model, right? And they're not going to give it away to like billions of users. So there lies our opportunity. Their hesitation to really go all in on that lies our opportunity.
Right. You're making the bet that Google is not going to give away Gemini to billions of people, but you are.
It's a
planning
safe
to give a
bet
lot
to
away.
make based on how Wall Street reacts to any reduction in the ad revenue, right?
Right.
I think this is the question a lot of people have about new products in very dominated, markets like search is like, if Perplexity works so well, won't Google just copy it? And you're kind of saying, well, they could copy it, but it might destroy their business model.
Well, they could have copied it like ages ago. We've been alive for like more than a year since we launched.
Well, it takes a year to get a meeting on the calendar at Google, so that's not really that much of a surprise. But look, this stuff is expensive to run. You can't give it all away for free either, right? So what's your plan to go Google scale?
First of all, we don't have to go Google scale. That's something that I've been very clear about ever since the beginning. One of our investors, Paul Bouquet, who used to work at Google and he invented Gmail, basically told me that just get 5 to 10% of the top earning users of Google.
Right. Just go after the rich users, and that'll sort of take care of it.
America. Just first focus on the American user base. People who really care about their time, people who actually want a lot of research for their decision making on their day-to-day life, try to get them to use your product more. This whole thing of having a billion users is like actually a red herring. It didn't really benefit most of these companies as much as they make it look like. In fact, did you see the stats on Facebook that the revenue per user in the US is like orders of magnitude more?
Yeah.
Whereas in the other parts of the world, it's
Exactly.
way less than that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to get to Google's scale, but you do have to make a product that is in some ways competitive with Google's AI search products. A lot of startups, or at least a handful of them, have tried to compete with Google in search before and
Mm-hmm.
failed. There was a startup called Neva that raised a
That's right.
bunch of money and shut down recently because they just basically decided like it's just not worth compete. You can't compete with Google in search.
But it was also a search engine you had to pay to use, which was not a very appealing proposition for most people.
Right, but you Perplexity has a pro version that costs $20 a month that I've been using. So, talk about that. Like how do you avoid the fate of the AI or the search startups that have gone before you, which are now like littering the graveyards of Silicon Valley?
Graveyards of Silicon Valley. Um,
Title of ep.
hey, look, to be very honest, we've already avoided their fate. They raised a lot of money before actually getting any usage, which we've avoided very, very
How many
consciously.
users do you have?
We have more than 10 million monthly actives.
Right. So as I understand it, right now, most of your revenue comes from these people who pay for the premium version of Perplexity.
That's right.
Do you plan on adding other business models? Do you think there will ever be ads on Perplexity,
Yeah.
for example?
Yeah. So we have two other business models in mind. One is APIs. We have developer APIs for our Perplexity models that we build ourselves and serve ourselves. So that's going to be one business model that we're going to pursue. Consider that as developer and enterprise. And the other business model that we're going to pursue is advertisements. Not today. We don't have any idea how to do it. Like, I really want to be honest here. I've been trying to think about this for like many months. What is even advertisement in this medium? Like, is it like influencing the answer, or is it influencing the sources but not the answer, or is it like something else? Like maybe the follow-ups you ask, like trying to incentivize the user to ask certain things. Like say I'm asking about platformer, and Kevin is trying to bit about like why you should not read platformer. Well, Casey's like why you should read platformer.
My army of bots are already seeding anti-platformer propaganda out there.
Yeah, so all these things are interesting things to think about, and like, what does it even mean to bid on a query now? It's you're not bidding on keywords anymore. You're bidding on actual like semantic queries, and like that's going to be an infinite space of possibilities. So how do I even build the equivalent of analytics and AdWords here? It's not even clear, and neither is it clear to Google, by the way. But why I'm optimistic that we are the startup to figure it out is because whoever built the existing AdWords and analytics has a lot of incentive to fight for keeping it. And they're going to be slow in rolling out ads business around the new model.
Right. At the same time, if somebody comes to Perplexity and says, hey, I want to go to Japan, what should I do? It's going to be easy to figure out an ad model for that.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, Aravind, here in the Bay Area, people are very excited about Perplexity. I was out at a dinner with a bunch of AI executives the other night, and people were sort of going around the table talking about how much they love Perplexity and how it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I think in our industry, in the media, a lot of publishers and journalists are very nervous about AI-powered search engines, in particular because Google traffic, referral traffic from Google search, is one of the main ways that publishers are making money today. It's a huge percentage of revenue made by publishers comes from people going to Google to look something up, clicking on a link, going to a publisher's website, getting an ad. That doesn't happen nearly as much with Perplexity, and you don't really have to go to the links at all. I mean, unless you're Casey and you're double checking things for your newsletter, if the product works as designed, the answers you're looking for are right there in the response. And there are these little links to citations, and there's this little menu of sources, but I find myself barely ever clicking on those links and sources when I'm just casually browsing the web. So why should publishers not be terrified of what you're building?
First of all, they should not be terrified because we are letting the user know that we did use their content to get the answer. Like unlike ChatGPT, in fact when ChatGPT gives you sources, it's just in a bracket somewhere, and like most people don't even know what to do with them. And we clearly put it at the top. Your logo is there and your link is there, and like it's one click, you just get there. The other reason they should not be terrified is that at the end, your true incentive, I'm not talking about what pays for you, but your true incentive is to get as many people read the stuff you wrote. What did Casey write? What did Kevin write? That any paragraph that's relevant to the query they asked, if more people see that, it's good for you. I understand that that doesn't actually like lead to direct monetization. If somebody read a paragraph that you wrote in the context of a query in a Perplexity answer and never actually visited your website, how do you track that? You cannot track that. And if you cannot track that, even though your brand awareness and your individual awareness increased, um, you actually cannot. The
You
publisher
can't make
doesn't-
any money from it,
Yeah, exactly.
which means that you can't pay the journalist or the person who's putting the information out
Right.
onto the internet
Right.
for your website, your
Right.
search engine to go and
That's
scrape.
right. And,
So-
and that's why I think while this is a better way to reach more people, more readers, the referral that we give will be way higher quality than the referral you get from a traditional search engine, because they're actually only coming there despite reading the summary. Like Casey only goes to the link to actually go and read further. So there's a very high intent there. So you cannot measure the value of the traffic in the same way. That said, there should be ways to measure the awareness of what you wrote even without a referral traffic. And we need to build the underlying analytics for that. And we need to tell publishers, okay, these are the number of times that this particular snippet of New York Times was used in a Perplexity answer across, this week. And that should be used as an incentive for you guys to get paid more. And I think like we need to like work together to build all these things rather than like trying to see it as like, hey, like you're taking my stuff and using it. But I'm also like sympathetic to like what the current lawsuit that is going on, where you're just taking all your data tokens and training like these base foundation models there, which we do not do, by the way. We don't train anything on like anybody's data.
But you use GPT as one of your underlying models, which
We
did
use
do that.
GPTs, llamas, all of these models are like there.
Yeah, all your foundational models did use that training data.
Yeah, they did. We do not. And we do post-train them to be good at the task of summarization. But that is not using anybody's data. That is just a skill that we are teaching these models to be good at.
Let me ask you this. I mean, do you accept the premise that the better Perplexity gets, the less traffic it should be sending outbound?
I don't think so.
Really? I find that hard to believe. If I were you, I would not want people to feel like they needed to visit a lot of other websites after they visited something I built that was called an answer engine.
No, not really. For example, there are many times I've actually visited links on like that were given by Perplexity to like read more, because I like one part of the answer and I just wanted to know like even more details of what that person has read. This is individual to me. And by the way, one of those domains has been like Wall Street Journal, New York Times. Like I've definitely visited these links a lot, mainly because I trust the fact the amount of effort that went into producing a New York Times or Wall Street Journal article is a lot. Because I talk to you guys, I know like how much background research you do to get something out, and so the economic value of that output is very high, and that should be respected.
Do you think that Perplexity should compensate the publications that provide the sources for your answers in some way? Do you think you owe that to the publishers who are putting the stuff on the internet for you to go and digest and summarize?
But we are kind of doing that by like increasing the awareness. Like we clearly show the.
We don't get paid in awareness, though. Awareness doesn't pay our
Yeah,
mortgages.
so we need to build a different way to like I'm not saying we should see the direct licensing or API is one way of doing the payment, but there may be other more interesting, longer term sustainable ways where the number of eyeballs we get on the brand or the domain is still a way to account for in terms of what we are kind of paying for implicitly. And like we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
So, let's say, accept every premise that you've just shared and sort of take it on its own terms. And that in the near-term future, despite the fact that you're showing these links, publishers continue to lay off journalists, other companies build engines not unlike yours, and the overall amount of journalism in the world continues to shrink. You rely on that journalism and this sort of idea of a real-time graph to create a useful product. Have you skipped ahead a bit to think about, well, gosh, if the current trends continue, are the sources of data for the thing I'm building going to dry up in a way that creates problems for me as an entrepreneur? Or do we sort of overinflate the importance of journalism to what you're building, and that there's just sort of enough data out there for you to build the product that you want, regardless of whether journalism has a real future?
I think what you're saying is like very valid. Like the anybody can make an arbitrary tweet or like a blog post with very little effort, but what a journalist does of actually doing all the relevant background research getting their sources right, and then like writing a very nice, concise, summarized article of all the whole thing should be valued a lot more. So I agree with that. And if the economy of journalism is getting affected, then um, certainly like all the companies that are relying on the quality of their output for their own service should help them. I'm totally like in alignment with that. And my sense is that there are few people who do it really well, like you guys, and there are a lot of people who don't put a lot of effort. Like there are like a lot of journals, a lot of mediums, right? Not everyone is New York Times. There's a reason. So my sense is that some mediums and some journalists like are where people really trust and go to, and like the smaller ones who don't put in a lot of effort are not prioritized by AI companies.
Well, I think another possible outcome than the one you're talking about, Casey, where journalism just kind of shrivels and dies and then there's no more good source data for the AI search engines, is that publishers just put all of the good information behind paywalls or in walled gardens where the AI search engines can't actually go out and search them.
Oh,
And
they'll find a way. How hard is it going to be to code a bot that subscribes to the New York Times and reads it? I mean, honestly.
I mean, but publishers are already starting to block these crawling, robots from their websites because they don't want to be used as training data. So I guess the question for you is like, is that something you're worried about too? In addition to sort of the concerns about journalism, like, are you worried that the best sources of information are going to try to hide themselves from your search engine?
Possible. I mean, Reddit is trying to go this direction. Twitter has already gone very far in that direction, and it's very hard to use any Twitter content anymore. The value of information is not just in its quality, but also in like how many people have become aware of it, right? And if you go too far along the direction of just paywalling everything, making it super hard for people to learn about that thing, then your own incentive as a creator of that information is like, hey, look, I get it, but man, like I do want people to know what I read, what I wrote.
I mean, that's true. But at the same time, we've run the experiment on what if all the journalism were free, right? Like the New York Times didn't have a paywall until 2011. And go back and look how the New York Times was doing in 2011. It wasn't great. It was only until they put up the paywall that they were able to recoup some of the value. And what happened during the time when all of it was free? Google figured out a way to extract the maximum amount of value out of what the New York Times was doing. So I don't really buy the argument that if we were just sort of to let down our paywalls and trust that awareness would pay all of our bills for the rest of time, that's like supported empirically.
Yeah, my argument is not that. My argument is let's figure out a way to monetize awareness better.
Yeah.
And Google has not done that, right? Google has figured out a way to like monetize a platform which gives you the awareness, but only for themselves and not for you. I'm saying maybe we can do something that's a win-all situation. I've not figured it out.
I mean, one thing you could do is just effectively lead gen. It's like, did you know that, in the past 50 searches that you've done on Perplexity, we've been showing you this source? Would you be interested in maybe subscribing or like subscribing to their newsletter?
Yeah, that's a cool idea. And like we could also do interesting ideas like joint subscriptions and things like that. So something to explore.
You recently posted about a new feature called Perplexity push notifications, which I've gotten a few of now. It basically alerts you on your phone whenever there's like a big news story.
Yeah.
And
I'd call it Perplush, by the way, but that's just me.
Don't take branding advice from
Sorry.
Casey. So, but and then when you tap on the notification, it takes you to this like Perplexity results page where you can see basically like a summary of, who won the Super Bowl or whatever. And you also have some other sort of news summarization experiments in your app, like this Discover section where you can go and see just kind of like an AI-generated summary of all the major news stories happening on a given day. So it seems like you are kind of expanding beyond sort of search, and you do want to get into more news curation. Talk about your vision there and sort of what you're trying to build.
Yeah, so it's not just for news. Our goal, at least the North Star that I've set for us, for the company, as well as external messaging, is to be the ultimate knowledge app, the TikTok of knowledge. That's what I want, because I think that's good for the world.
Wait, what is the TikTok of knowledge? Sort of knowledge, but with more dancing?
That's funny. Make knowledge as cool as watching dancing videos. That's well,
Got it.
maybe it never get there. I don't mind if it never gets the billion user base that TikTok got, but there are certainly at least 100 million people in the world who want to be smarter every day, and like we want to serve them. And like making people smarter every day comes from obviously serving real-time information on the web, as well as interesting insights about existing things that are not real-time, that is personally catered to them, right? Personalized to what topics they're interested in, personalized to what they already know and like might not know already. So these are things that we want to build, and these are things that actually can be built now, today, with the existing tools that we have. Push notifications is one thing. We have the feeds, the Discover feed right now. It's obviously very well curated and very, very limited. But you can think about us expanding and automating a lot of it and personalizing to what you want. And that's going to be a different segment to the product. It'll add more depth to the product.
Yeah, I mean, I've used your news digest sort of discovery tools, and on a product level, they're quite good. Like I don't have a lot to complain about, but every time I'm using them, I do get this like gnawing feeling in my stomach, which is like, if billions of people got their news this way, like I wouldn't have a job. These news curation products that you're building are very good at summarizing what's out there and sort of extracting the most relevant information. But publishers aren't seeing a dime from that. People, journalists aren't seeing a dime from that. It's sort of, it feels icky because I feel like a parasite just kind of like gobbling up the best of what people have put on the internet through your app and not paying for it. So I guess I'm just,
Yeah,
I
Casey,
just like
I'll
you to
tell you,
respond
I'll
to that
tell you
and
something.
maybe make me feel a little bit better about
Honestly,
using your product.
Look, I'm not saying this just to flatter you, but people care about what you got to say, and people care about what New York Times got to say. Really, like that's the brand. There is a value for the brand. People pay for the brand, right? Like people care. Oh, Kevin said like AI has convinced him to leave his wife.
That would never happen.
Like Kevin thinks like there's something that might be better than Google. Like
Yeah.
this is what like you're building. You're building your brand, and New York Times has like a brand for like several decades. So I think like that is not going to just go away because like somebody else is giving summarized articles.
I hope you're right.
But also it's like, Kevin is a columnist. There are also journalists who just go cover the local school board. They don't have national brands. And
Right.
when AI tools come along and say, hey, we read an article, here's what happened at the school board meeting, those people probably aren't going to click the link. They're not going to follow that journalist because they already got what they needed, right? I think that's a larger point.
Yeah. And just to be clear, like we did not bring you on the podcast today to just harangue you about how you're destroying journalism.
I came prepared that you guys are going to ask hard questions because I listened to your pod with Sundar and you drilled them there. So I was like, okay, if they went so hard on the sea of Google, I'm definitely going to have a hard time.
But we do agree on one thing, which is I want you to make Kevin smarter. So I don't care how you do it, but
yeah, please help.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Aravind Srinivas, thanks for coming on Hard Fork.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Casey.